When it comes to compact sports sedans, there's a lot of competition. Almost all of them are from Germany, but the entry levels for those are starting out nearly at 6 figures, which is just insanity for what you're getting out of it. Base model with almost nothing else other than a badge. I'm Niall.
I'm Victor, and you're right, Niall. These cars, the European models, are very expensive now, and it's very competitive. These are offerings from Asia. This is from Korea, that is from Japan. This is the 2023 Kia Stinger GT Elite.
And this is the 2023 Acura TLX Type S. Let's get right into it. All right, so specs-wise, there's a lot going on here. Victor, what's under the hood of your Stinger?
The Kia Stinger has a 3.3-liter twin-turbo V6 with 368 horsepower and 376 pound-feet of torque. Yep. And it's made it to an 8-speed automatic transmission, all-wheel drive, and this is a rear-wheel biased all-wheel drive system. Very
true. That's the main difference with the TLX. This is a front-wheel drive platform on the TLX. Even though Acura says you can get about 70% weight or 70% distribution to the rear wheels, it still is a front-wheel drive chassis. It uses a 3-liter turbocharged V6, so single turbo versus the twin turbo on the Kia, 355 horsepower and 354 pound-feet of torque. Also uses a 10-speed automatic transmission, so a couple extra gears. And why we decided to do a showdown on these two vehicles is on paper they are pretty close, right? We just talked about the engines, but then even the exterior dimensions and interior stuff is pretty close too. But the Stinger has a couple things over the Acura, right?
Yeah, the Stinger has a little bit of a longer wheelbase, about an inch and a little bit longer wheelbase, although the overall length is a bit shorter than the TLX.
It is, yeah, and that's the major design difference between the two. Like, I like both cars. They both look fantastic. The front end, sides, back, yeah, I'd say the back end on the Stinger is way better, but I do like the front on the TLX, but this is a very angular car, right? You got a lot of sharp edges. The front end, especially with the grille, is very sharp edges, where the Stinger is a little bit more rounded off.
That's
a little bit more aerodynamic, and then that rear end is just, ooh, it's perfection.
Yeah, and one of the biggest difference is the layout of the powertrains. This, as Niall has mentioned, this is a transverse mounted V6 engine, and that's a longitudinal, and as a result of that, the weight distribution of these cars are very, very different. The Stinger has a near perfect 50-50 distribution, 52 in the front and 40 at the back.
Yeah, but the Acura is like very front heavy, 59% towards the front, 41% towards the back, and that's because of that V6 engine. If you went with the 2-liter 4-cylinder turbo, it's closer to what the Stinger has, but if you're looking for an actual car that performs well, maybe you do take it on the track or do some light, autocross stuff like that, then the TLX is going to feel a little bit front heavy, and considering it is a front-wheel drive bias or front-wheel drive chassis, you are going to notice that a little bit more. So the Stinger is definitely the more performance-oriented vehicle. But it's a lot more money than the TLX. Like, here in Canada, it's about a $7,000 difference between these two cars. In the States, not so bad. It's about $2,500 US between the two. And the major thing you get with the Acura in the US is 2 years of maintenance included. You don't get that here in Canada. So the price difference between the two in the States is really close. But here, $7,000 difference, quite a pill to swallow.
Yeah, you're right. The price difference is quite dramatic here in Canada. I'm looking forward to find out what they're like on the road. For sure.
But there's a couple other things that the Stinger has that the Acura doesn't have. Brakes, the front brakes are on both cars actually are Brembo, but the Stinger's got rear Brembo brakes. And then one thing that the Acura misses out on is a head-up display. You don't get that at all, no matter where you are.
Yeah, head-up displays are great. With driving, you don't even have to look down to the dash. All your information that you will ever need is on the head-up display.
Let's take a quick look around the back, because that's also another important thing with these two vehicles. Yes, the rear ends, first of all, design-wise, yeah, I like the spoiler on the back of the TLX. It's kind of integrated into the Stinger, and I love the Stinger design, no doubt. But it's going to be cargo capacity. The TLX is like a normal sedan. Trunk pops open, and you've got, I think it's like 260 liters of storage. Yeah, but that's... right, that's the key.
Look at that.
Oh, like it's like I think 660 liters of cargo storage behind the rear seat. So if you're looking for storage between the two, Stinger's got it. Absolutely, right?
Yeah, for sure. And this lift back design gives you so much more utility. And when putting stuff in, it's just so much easier. The opening is way larger.
Yep, no doubt. There's a lot of good, and there's only so many cars that come in that configuration. Like a BMW 4 Series has a lift back. Buick Regal which was the last car that we did a showdown with the Stinger, also was like that before they killed it. So trunk space is going to be huge between this. But it's strange because Acura, at least according to the paper, right, the interior is supposed to be smaller, but I find it's a little bit better. So we'll talk about that when we hit the road. But we talked about kind of the few things that the Stinger has over the Acura. The Acura does have a couple things that is a compelling offering. It has a ELS Studio 3D 17 speaker audio system, which sounds fantastic. You've got 4 ceiling mounted speakers that help to amplify the overall sound. You've also got a windshield wiper de-icer, which could be nice here in Canada. And something that we talked about when we drove the TLX a couple years ago was the Iconic Drive ambient lighting theme. So you can change the themes. They've got a whole bunch of different, not just race circuits, but also different sort of ambiances from around the world. So nothing here from Canada, but I have set it up for the Suzuka theme, as we just were at Suzuka last week for the Formula One race. Figured it was a good fit for our video here. And aside from that, I mean, like I said, design on the Stinger is fantastic. I really do like the Acura. They do call their headlights and taillights, the daytime running lights and taillights chicanes, and they do look pretty cool. So some good stuff there, but I think we got to hit the road, right? Let's go take these for a drive.
Yeah, definitely.
And see which one you should be considering if you've got about $60,000. Well, $64,000 if you're in Canada, but you know, in the mid 50s in the US, and you want to decide which one do you want to go for if you're not going for a German compact sports car.
So we're on the road now, and I'm in the Stinger. Niall is in the Acura, and let me tell you about a little bit about the ride quality of the Stinger. So first of all, the Stinger has a 2-stage suspension dampening system. So now that I'm in sport mode, it's a little bit tighter and a little bit firmer in terms of the ride quality. It is great on the highway and not bad on the road, on the street, in city as well.
Yeah, the Acura here also has an active damping system for the suspension. I think that it's really similar. I mean, I find that the car does firm up quite a bit, and that's what you're going to be getting with any of these compact sports sedans like this. You know, Acura kind of thinks it's a luxury brand. I'd say it's more of a premium brand, and while Kia is technically considered more of a consumer brand, the Stinger has helped to elevate that, and given the performance and everything that you get out of it, it really is more of a premium vehicle. So the ride on this is pretty comparable as well. I'd say the interiors are the biggest difference, right? Like the Stinger, first of all, it looks great on the inside. This is a lot more like, the Japanese really like to have buttons and stuff, which is awesome, but there's a lot going on with the interior on the Acura, and it's like can be a little overwhelming if you first get into it. And the infotainment sucks. Like that's a big letdown. The infotainment really is not that good compared to the Kias.
The infotainment system on the Kia is fairly intuitive. It gets the job done. It's touch screen. You don't have to use the touchpad like you would in the Acura, and everything here is pretty simple. You've got the buttons here, which I like. You know, obviously you want to have your climate control and everything like that in physical buttons, so you don't have to touch it with the touch screen like some of the newer cars now. And in terms of the steering, Niall, why don't you tell us a little bit about the steering feel in the Acura, and whether if it feels good.
It's very like digital, right? Acura's really going fly-by-wire for everything, and there's not like a ton of feedback. Yeah, it works. It's firm enough, and it does feel responsive, but it just doesn't feel like I'm as connected to the car as I am in something like the Stinger, but even in some other luxury vehicles in this class segment. It's nothing terrible. I just don't see that if I were on like a track, or even, like I said, maybe an autocross day, if it would be great. But it is a firm feel, and the physical steering wheel is kind of weird. They do have this perforated leather, and it almost feels like, not sandpaper, but there's a bit of a coarse feel to it, which I guess you kind of get used to, but I don't know, it's something about it. But what I do like, before we talk about the suspension, is the button placement for the hazard button is the best on this car. Acura knows what this car is used for. It is meant to race around town, and if you're driving around, you're doing a quarter mile, you're doing a rip up the street, you're next to somebody at the traffic light, and you win, you slap that hazard button, international sign of victory, you won the race. It's easily placed right there. And the Kia, it's not too bad either, but this one, like, you just give it a good slap, let the person that you just beat on the road know that you won.
Yeah, the steering on the Stinger is more direct. I can feel the road a little bit more. The road feedback is something that I think Kia did a good job with the Stinger. I can feel the bumps and a little bit more vibration coming through the steering wheel when I'm driving, which is great for a car like this, because when you want to drive this spiritedly, you want a little bit more feedback, right? But the one complaint I have with the steering wheel is that it seems like it's a little too thin for my liking. Is that the case with you, Niall?
Well, I do feel it's kind of thick, and that's why, like, it's not a bad wheel design overall. But yeah, like I say, I think when you get into it, you'll feel what I'm talking about when it comes to this perforated material. Like, it's got a good grip and firm, and maybe that's the idea behind the perforation, is if you're racing around, you got some sweaty fingers, it'll actually help to grip it, whereas if it was all leather or all flat leather, it'd be a little bit more difficult to grip. But yeah, I find it's functional enough. There's certainly some pretty hardcore stuff out there if you go with the Germans. One thing I find annoying, which is sort of related to the steering wheel, is the manual shift mode on this. Like, if I put it into manual mode, give it a bit of a rip, it sounds great. It shifts fast. And Honda says that this 10-speed is like 40% faster at shifting versus the 10-speed that you would get on the normal TLX. But you can't shift into second. If you put this car in full Sport Plus, Sport transmission, manual shift mode, Honda will shift it automatically into second for you. It's like they don't trust you that you know how to drive the car. So from a dig, you're better off in automatic shifting mode. And if you're cruising around and you don't really care that the first gear shift you have to do is done for you, then oh well. But I think the Stinger is a little bit more forgiving. The Stinger allows you to really drive the car more than this does.
Yeah, you're right. In the Stinger, if you turn off the traction control, the car will not upshift for you. So if you want to slap the limiter, you could if you're in traction control off mode. Otherwise, it will upshift for you, but not nearly as intrusive as the Acura. Speaking of exhaust sounds, obviously in a car like this, the sound is like a really major aspect of the enjoyment of driving this car. The Kia Stinger has a reasonable soundtrack, but it's not something that is my favorite. Compared to the TLX, now you can be the judge of that, but it sounds pretty good from behind.
Yeah, I mean, both cars are definitely pumping in audio, and I find with this car it almost pumps in like there's a microphone on the outside, because I feel more road noise. But I think what we'll do is I'll take it for a bit of a dig here, so we'll come to a quick stop and give it a launch here, 0 to 100. No problems whatsoever. In automatic shift mode, it will go up to the red line in first gear. You can't do that in manual mode. All right, Victor, how about you?
All right, my turn. Give it a little bit of a brake boost, and we're off. Whoa. That's 100. So both cars does 0 to 60 miles an hour or 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, well within the 4-second range. But I think the Stinger takes the win here in terms of straight line acceleration speed.
Yeah, and it should, because it's got more power, and I think realistically between the two cars, it's like a 17-pound weight difference in advantage towards the Stinger. So the Stinger should win in a no hands down competition whatsoever. But I think what we need to do is pull over, swap over, you get in the wheel behind this, I'll swap into the Stinger, and we'll see what we think.
Okay, we just swapped over, and I'm in the TLX, and Niall is in the Stinger now. So first impressions, the engine sound is something that I enjoy a lot more in this Acura than I did in the Stinger. The steering wheel is thick, like Niall has mentioned, but I can totally feel the perforated leather knobs kind of, and it's not too comfortable to hold.
Yeah, you end up getting used to it, and it's weird because like this is why it's so good to do a showdown back to back like this, because we're really getting into the cars and seeing how they are side by side. But yeah, like the Stinger also has a slightly perforated steering wheel, but it's microscopic perforations versus the TLX, which is like they're huge. And I know what you mean, like right away I can feel, you know, the steering wheel is a little bit thinner. You know, design is almost the same, but it is a little bit thinner, so I do feel that the TLX has a bit better of a feel. And you know, I don't know now, like comparing the two, I think that the steering on the Stinger certainly feels a lot more mechanical, but the Acura is almost like, it's like too precise, right? It's too electronic that you really do lose a lot of that feedback that you really want to get out of a steering setup, right? You want to feel something.
Yeah, that's right. In the TLX, the steering seems like it's very sensitive, and I'm just turning a little bit and the whole car turns. So if sensitivity is something that you enjoy, TLX is the way to go.
Absolutely. So let's we'll take a quick rip here. Full throttle Stinger. Oh yeah. And 100. Yeah, it's weird. Like the sound, I think the raw sound of the TLX is better, but the pumped in audio on the Stinger is better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's my turn to take a rip. Yeah, you're right, Niall. The pumped-in audio sounds better in the Stinger, and when I was behind you in the Stinger, it sounded like the TLX has really good exhaust sounds out the back, but when I'm inside the car, I don't know.
Well, it's funny because when you did your rip, before we swapped over, like, you know, I couldn't really hear it, but because we're using AirPods here to communicate with each other as we're filming, I could hear that engine over the phone, whereas I didn't hear it when you did it in the Stinger. So like, whether it's because it's being faked or it just sounds better overall, like it sounded good. I gotta say, it sounds good in that. But like they're both great. They're just slightly different ways to get to that goodness. Yeah, overall, like, they both handle really well. I mean, the Stinger, I think, handles the best. The ride, I'd say, is a little bit smoother on the Stinger, even in sport mode. And just overall, like, I love the cabin of this car. I think that, you know, Peter Schrader did an amazing job designing this car overall. I don't know how this has more head and leg room in the front, because like I'm almost maxed out here, and in the TLX I find that I just have a little bit more space. And realistically, between the two, it's way easier for me to get out of the TLX. It is painful for me, like not physically painful, it's embarrassing for me to get out of this car because of the way the roofline is set up, whereas the Acura is like a normal sedan. I have no problems there. But overall though, both are extremely compelling, and I think it's tough to really decide. Like obviously there's a monetary difference between the two, but you know, when you really do sit side by side and back to front with these and have a chance to drive both of them, they do have their benefits and some flaws on both sides. But yeah, I think it's a tough decision to make. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Stinger is a little bit more fun to drive in a sense where, you know, you can get the back to kick out a little bit more when you're driving it to the limits, and the Acura is a little bit more understeery. Just like when I turned in just now and gave it a rip, it just felt a little bit understeering.
Yeah, the Stinger just goes, and that's, I think, part of the chassis just being designed to be a performance vehicle, whereas the Acura, you know, and people will argue forever, you know, Acura really is the more performance division of Honda, and they haven't really been doing a lot of performance recently. The the Type S is a great return to that. I'm so excited that they brought that back. But for the most part, you know, the Stinger really is a pure performance-oriented vehicle bred from the ground up, and it really does show. Oh, just even little rips here and there. I mean, both cars can get you into a lot of trouble because, you know, in no time you're up to speed, and then next thing you know, you're getting tickets and pulled over, and you know, all sorts of trouble. But I love ripping it in both of them. They're so good.
That's right. If you can see my smile right now, you know, this expression tells you everything.
Absolutely. Well, I think we need to head back and figure out, we need to deliberate and see which one of these really is the best for what type of buyer is looking out there. Because obviously there's no one size fits all, but let's head back to our studio area and figure out which one really takes the win here between these two vehicles. Well, it's funny, on Facebook and Instagram I had posted that we were going to be comparing these two cars because it's really the question on everybody's mind. Everybody wants to know what the Stinger and TLX Type S have to offer, and we're doing this so you don't have to, so you're welcome in advance for that. But we've driven both cars now. We've had a chance to see them back to back, and I think we've got some opinions on them. I mean, we talked about how they drive, perform, and everything. You know, on paper, the Stinger certainly is the winner, but Victor, if it was your, you know, $50,000, $60,000 that you wanted to spend, between the two, what would you take and why?
I think I like part of what the Acura gives me and part of what the Stinger gives me. It's a hard choice, but I think I'll have to go with the Stinger. A couple of things that I really like about the Acura is the engine soundtrack. It's far superior to the one that the Kia offers. It gives you a little bit more excitement, the V6 high-pitched tone, which the Stinger, it gives you a little bit more of a growl at the low end, but I would prefer, if it's a V6, it's a high-pitched thing for me. But on the other hand, I really like the powertrain layout of this car. This car gives me a little bit more slidey oversteery feel when I'm, you know, going into a corner and stuff like that, whereas the Acura is just a little bit more understeering.
Yeah, there's more confidence with the Stinger,
yeah,
and I think that really comes down to, again, what we talked about on the road test is it really was engineered from the ground up to be a performance vehicle, whereas the TLX is sporty as it looks and all that. I mean, this is the, you know, first time they've put the Type S in this generation, and it feels like more of an afterthought. They built a car that would sell, and then they thought, well, we really do need a performance version of it. So it's nice. I mean, it's great that they finally offered it, because I drove the MDX Type S. I think it was in 22, so it's been about a year and a bit, almost 2 years now since we drove it. And I think it's the same engine, if I recall correctly.
That's right.
On that, so this definitely, you get more exhilaration out of it because the car is smaller, and it's a car. SUVs I just don't find are super sporty, despite being sport utility vehicles. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, like the Stinger, first of all, on paper is certainly the better pick. Price between the two of them, honestly, I mean, $7,000 difference. To get the Stinger compared to the TLX. Here in Canada, it makes way more sense financially to get the Stinger. If you're in the States, though, I think that it would be a little bit tougher decision. But, you know, for me, the major thing is getting in and out of the car. We've talked about it before with the Stinger. It's just something about right here. It's nothing else. Like, I'm huge, but this portion here doesn't work for me, and I don't know why. This is a little bit more sedan style. This is a little bit more coupe style. And I think that's the major difference between the two. It's way easier for me to get in and out of the TLX, which is probably why I take it. And also those rims are pretty sick. I mean, I like those rims.
Yeah,
Stinger's
you're right.
great too, but I mean, those are, and it's fun in Canada. This is the Type S. In the States, if you want those with the Pirelli P0s, you got to pay like an extra $1,000. So you can get a Type S with crappy wheels and crappy tires, or you can you could pay a little bit more and get the good ones. But here in Canada, they only give you the good stuff. But yeah, I think overall, both cars have a lot to offer. If you've got the budget for it, then maybe go with the Acura, but if it's my money, Kia Stinger all the way.
Yeah, that's right. I agree with you now.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a real pleasure. Victor's joining us for the first time here on Test Drive. We want to let you tell us what you think. So did you enjoy this episode with Victor? Did you enjoy the showdown? This is the first showdown that we have done in about like a year and a half now since moving to Ontario for myself. It's obviously something I haven't been able to do, but we want to hear your feedback. What did you think of this episode? What did you think of these two vehicles? Which one would you pick and why? And also don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video if you liked it, and also consider joining. We have a membership program too now that you can help support this channel and help us do more videos like this for as little as $1 a month. You can help support this channel. So from all of us here at PRN, from Victor, myself, James over in Montreal, thanks for watching and take care.